Cozzens, welcome to the Star-Tribune, and take a chance to introduce yourself and tell us why you're in the race.
Thank you very much. My name is Dee Cozzens, that is, Cozzens. I've lived in the state a long time. I was out for probably 12 years. I worked in Texas as a troubleshooter for United Health and Sage Health Management. So, in consulting and assisting facilities, nursing homes, as well as hospitals, and recouping their organization because sometimes they fell in disarray and didn't follow their budgets correctly. So I've been around for a while. I guess the reason that I'm here sitting in this chair is I'm really concerned about our state. Not with our folks, not with our people. We're great people. We have very, very well-educated, hard-working people in our state, and they've been that way, I guess, as part of their DNA. But I see that we've become fragmented. We have several different factions, and I don't like to see that. We've got to remain together. That's the primary purpose that I ran. That I decided to run in the first place, was see if I could bring some sanity back into the friendships and the maybe the differences we have in our communities, but in our state, to bring us back and unify us. That's my primary purpose.
So what do you consider the biggest problem that needs solving and leadership from the governor in Wyoming?
I think Matt's done a reasonably good job. He's had to make some tough decisions, and he might have got counsel from others who perhaps suggested that he go in a different way, but the issue right now, as I see, is that the biggest thing that came about was the division regarding the Common Core thing and the actions that were taken to perhaps remove Cindy from her position that she was elected to, and that divided us. That's over. That's history. We got to get back on the path and try to avoid negative stuff, trying to put the other person down to build yourself up. That just shows a weakness in yourself. If you put the other guy down, you're trying to make yourself have that step up above him. There's other ways to solve those issues other than just negative stuff.
So what would you consider the biggest difference between you and your opponents?
Well, I think that they're all libertarians. See, I'm kind of focused that way. We're all libertarians, and if you would say the pledge once in a while, we say we pledge allegiance to the flag and one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I believe that everyone has their liberty in the United States of America. They may choose a different path than I would choose, certainly. But then, as long as it's not harming someone else and they're doing it on their own accord without compulsion, I believe that within the laws that they should be able to practice whatever creed, whatever belief that they have.
So what would be the biggest difference, the biggest shift in your administration if you were governor from Matt Mead's administration?
Again, I think that Matt's done a pretty good job. I'm a people person. I like to profile others. If you're very familiar with the DISC system, there's dominant, influencing, steady, and compliant people. I'm a influencing or an intuitive person. I like people. I'm a good salesman. I would take the staff that we have in the state of Wyoming now, which I greatly appreciate, and with few exceptions, they're doing very good jobs in their various departments. I would take them and bring them in and remind them that I don't have all the answers, that they have been employed because of their expertise and their knowledge and their previous background. And bring them together, make us a smooth functioning organization, and work over the budget very, very closely, and make sure that they adhere to that budget. because we'll be in for some tough times. As you know, oil has taken a dip, and natural gas hasn't been up for long. So we're going to have to watch our budget very closely. The difference would be that I would probably intermingle and sometimes appear to interfere with the department directors, but not in that sense. More to learn from myself. Basically, if we're headed in the right direction.
So you've called yourself a restoration Republican. What is that?
Oh, up until last year, I was a registered Republican. And I became dismayed with the lack of support that the Republican Party gave to their selected candidate. I was dismayed with a call that I received one time to contribute to the cause, which I've done in the past, surely, and was informed that because of a certain belief that the candidate that we had selected lost, and that was over the phone to me, and I'm saying, enough. So I investigated the Libertarian Party and contacted some people, my friends who I knew were Libertarians, and found that most of the Libertarians are really concise and exact with the support of the Constitution, fairness, equity, equality, and all the good things that go along with good Republican philosophies. So I am a restoration Republican running on the Libertarian ticket, and they knew that going in. They selected me, and that's why I'm here.
So assess, if you would, the state of the relationship between Wyoming and the federal government. What would you as governor, how would you as governor change the relationship? If so, how? And if not, why not?
Well, I sure wouldn't cut us off from their funds. 50% of our budget comes from the federal government. I believe that we have to install what I call a friendly persuasion, appropriate legislation, and a little bit of pressure with them to make sure that their philosophy, their approach to our state problems are in our best interest and the things that we as Wyomingites want. And work cooperatively with them, but at the same time, carry a big stick.
What would you say is next for the state's economy, and what would you do to get us there if you were elected?
State economy right now is pretty good. We know that. Those in executive positions in the state in the past been very frugal. We have a good rainy day fund. I would hope to maintain that. Of course, dip into it if necessary for emergencies, and make sure that it's invested correctly. The other thing I would do is I would promote, certainly this is repetitive with the other candidates, coal, our natural resources. But we took a step backwards last month, or early this month, when we went to Oregon and they denied us our request to use the a port out of Oregon to export the coal to China. Well, I called the coal people in Montana and talked to a guy by the name of Bud Clinch, and he said I could quote him, by the way. He would like to see more cooperation between Montana and Wyoming in the shipping of coal, exportation. And the reason why is because currently the coal that is shipped out of Wyoming is shipped through Montana into Canada, into two ports of Canadian origin. One's Prince Rupert and one is the Vancouver. So we need to join ourselves at the hip with Montana and make sure that we're cooperating with Canada and perhaps expand the volume that can be shipped out of those two ports. And then continue, of course, to see if we have more, maybe our friendly states to the west of us decide that maybe we can put in a port that will export coal.
So what would you do regarding gray wolves? How would you square your decision with federal judicial oversight?
Well, I think that was kind of a reinstitution or what do we call it? Reintroduction of the gray wolf into Wyoming because of we did not have that species in our state. We're cattlemen, we're sheepmen. My folks had 2 bands of sheep, and they raised cattle and all that, and I've always considered coyotes and wolves as predators. The coyotes are easier to handle, but wolves, they're mean, they're bad. And like I've said before, they've got long teeth, and they're about 200 pounds, and they can take a elk calf down in a moment. They're vicious. I think that I don't want to shoot them, but I'd like to reintroduce them back to Canada. They're, and I think it's in the best interest of our hunters, because the moose, the deer, the elk are diminishing in the at least the Sunlight area, in the Crandall Creek area. That's up near Cody. So just put them back in their environment. And if you have enough packs of wolves together, they kill each other anyway. So they maintain that balance. And they're cannibals too, by the way.
So you think reintroducing them to Canada is going to pass?
No, just
federal muster?
just relocate them and say, hey, Wyoming just doesn't want wolves, and that's it. It's like we can't hold elephants, or I don't think we want any camels either, do we?
What would you consider to be the biggest opportunity Wyoming is missing right now? And what would you do about it as governor?
I'll go back to the first theme as a unification. We have to be unified. We must get away from these factions that are causing to divide us. But there's a middle line, and it's a conservative line. It has to be defined as a conservative, because you got moderate and et cetera. But we've got to work together. Other than you got me. I lost my track where I was headed on that one. Could you repeat that again?
Sure. What would you consider to be the biggest opportunity Wyoming's missing right now?
Okay.
And what would you do about it as governor?
All right. Well, I think we need to also educate people to the fact that there are modern methods of processing our natural resources. Very, very thorough, very anti-pollution type methods, and we must really advance ourselves towards our energy and not lose track of our agriculture, which is very, very important. We're vulnerable right now. Wyoming's really rather vulnerable.
Regarding agriculture? Or
as a state? We're at war, we all know that. A recent report that I read from 9 attorney generals in 2005 with the border crossing, there were some 16,000 folks came across illegally who were from terrorist countries. We're not immune to that, guys. We need to beef up our highway patrol. We need to beef up our law enforcement and support our county sheriffs and that, and not do a Ferguson thing on them, because our law enforcement people are doing a very good job for the folks that they have and the 98,000 square miles we have to cover in this state. So we're rather vulnerable. We're vulnerable to disease. We're vulnerable to jihadists. We're vulnerable to the fact that we're trying to implement, or we try to implement, federal education standards. In 1976, there's a law in the books that says the federal government is not going to involve itself in establishing the curriculums of local school districts, or state for that matter. It was up to local people, local people to do that. The No Child Left Behind went to shambles. Now we come with Common Core. I'm not adamantly terribly upset with Common Core. It's just obsolete. And if you want everyone to think as commoners, then fine, implement it. But I don't think we're all commoners. I think that the people in the United States of America are above commoners. We don't have a ruling class and a working class, or we shouldn't have. I think we all put our shoes on the same way. Therefore, we need to continue to progress, because we are the greatest nation the world has ever seen.
So, I think it's fair to characterize your campaign as not very aggressive. You talking about campaign volunteers that you weren't interested in needing them or contributions, and
Well,
that you would be traveling a lot around the state.
Well, part of the problem was too that you couldn't raise any funds prior to the 19th of August. So
Right.
why would you want to do that and get into trouble? So my philosophy had been, as I approach people, all I want you to do is listen to me. If I talk common sense, if I've been successful in the past and I've had very few failures, then follow me. I would be your leader. I wouldn't be your ruler. I'm not. There's two types of sheep herders, you know. There's a sheep herder who sticks his dogs on the sheep to bring them in. Then there's a sheep herder who walks in front of his sheep, and they follow him. And that sheep herder is supposed to be humble. And I see some humility on that stand when I'm up there. I don't know that I act humble, but I see some humility, and I appreciate that. We must understand that it's a very important role to lead or be a representative of a great state like Wyoming. That you're dealing with people you love, people you know, and we're small enough to experience that. So we must really, if we can, try to abide by the test of conscience. What is the test of conscience? The test of conscience is do unto others as you would have them do unto you. So you look out for your brother. We are our brother's keeper. And we forget that in some of our corporate entities, our corporate takeovers, our hostile takeovers and things like that. It really gets bloody. And I've been involved in some of those. Husky Oil was taken over by Alberta Trunk Lines back in the 80s. And Husky Oil went down. So we're a little bit like predators sometimes. We have to be vigilant and a little bit aggressive, but let's remember that we, as elected leaders, we are responsible to those who elect us, and we're not any better than they are. So that's where I am.
We cruised right through my list of questions. Are there any questions from anybody else? So let me give you a chance for a closing statement, and if you could frame it up, why should we and voters choose you instead of your opponents?
Well, I believe that those who've worked with me in the past have known that we've had numerous successes, and not just in the state of Wyoming, but also in Texas and Colorado. There's a philosophy that I've always had, and it's called participative management, that you always try to hire people who are smarter than you are in their field, but then know them well enough that you're able to work with them and motivate them to get an objective taken care of. We have some objectives we have to focus on in the state of Wyoming. We have to focus on security, particularly up in the Powder River area. It's expanding, it's moving fast. It's hard to get a hotel up there. We're undergoing the same thing that the Bakken did. And what was their major problem? It was crime. So we must make sure that our law enforcement are well trained, vigilant, and that we control any bad environment that might try to move into our booming areas. The agriculture, we still need to focus very much on that. Food, I don't know whether you've noticed, but food is skyrocketing. We're paying we get a good buy at the facility because we buy on a group thing about $4.50 a pound for a hamburger. You can go to other places and it's $6 and $8 a pound. Agriculture can be one of the most stable things that we have in the state of Wyoming, and we need to, in all aspects, encourage that. If you don't have food, what happens? People start killing each other. Another thing you might take advantage of right now is the oil is at $85 a barrel, right? I would sure find as many empty tanks as I possibly could. Old refinery, whatever, I'd buy it up. I can trade oil for food. When your dollar goes to hell, nobody's going to take your dollar for food. You're going to have something that's usable in return. And people are projecting that. We're printing $80 billion a month in Federal Reserve notes. That's borrowed money, guys. When's it going to stop? I thought it would stop in 1980, but it didn't. It's still going. But there's a day of reckoning.
Mr. Cozzens, thank you so much for coming to the Star-Tribune.
Thank you.
It's good to have you here.
Yep.